Hello and welcome to another edition of Another Book Review. This week I'll be reviewing Grady Hendrix's novel, The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I'll talk very briefly about the author, go into a spoiler-free overview of the plot, talk about what I liked about the book, what I didn't like about the book, who I'd recommend the book to, and finish off with what I'll be reading for next time. Grady Hendrix is an author who's been writing for about 10 years. He's published several novels. He's probably still best known for Horror Store, which came out a few years back. I think that's being adapted into either a television show or a film. This book, The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, is currently being developed as an Amazon TV series and is about a group of women in Charleston, South Carolina, who have formed a book club, and during the course of about 10 years, a vampire comes to town, and the book is really they're kind of having to deal with this vampire who is starting to impact their community. Children are starting to go missing, and it's really the question of what do they do to kind of prevent this from happening. And I really enjoyed it. I should say I enjoyed it. There are some things I had problems with, but I thought that if you've read enough vampire novels and seen enough any kind of vampire media, there's certain tropes that really go all the way back to Dracula. And I think Grady Hendrix does a good job of kind of twisting and subverting some of those. You have a scene where the protagonist goes to the house or the vampire's lair while the vampire is there. That's in this. There's a scene where, the protagonist tells the vampire that they know that they are a vampire. So it's the I know that you know that I know scene. That's here too. And I think he does a good job with kind of those major plot points in this and kind of twisting them or subverting them or giving them enough of kind of a fresh telling to make them effective. I think he handles the main character really well, who's a character named Patricia. I like how she feels like a capable person without feeling like John Rambo and able to just kind of like take all this damage and kind of doesn't go to a place where she automatically thinks of just like killing this vampire. She has kind of a series of doubt and questions what she knows. And I thought that was important. She's still treated as a smart, capable person, but she's kind of hemmed in from some of the societal obligations that she has, as well as kind of society's pressure on women in order to conform to certain decorum, as it were. And so I enjoyed that. I think the character does change throughout the novel, which I thought was good too. If there are some things I didn't like as much, I thought that there's I think 4 or 5 women in the book club. I think the women in the book club at times didn't feel distinct to me, and they kind of felt like it was hard for me to kind of distinguish them. At times, they didn't really have, in my opinion, enough things that made them feel like their own people and distinct from one another. There's a character named Grace and a character named Slick, which is maybe part of it. There's a musician named Grace Slick, and so in my mind, that whole time, it was having difficulty like separating out these characters as different enough, and so they just kind of jumbled together in my mind. I also felt like the ending was a little anticlimactic in my opinion. I think that the book would have been served better if there had been something of a prologue where you saw the history of Patricia before all the events in this, before she really kind of becomes a housewife, married woman with 2 kids. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of her history before that. I think if he had like a scene where, we learned throughout the novel very briefly that she was a nurse at one point. I think if Grady Hendrix had a prologue scene where she was a kind of a nurse on the worst night of her shift, where maybe she was an ER nurse and someone came in with multiple gunshot wounds and she had to act really quickly to save this person, I thought that would have given the character a little bit more steel. She kind of comes into the book as kind of a blank slate, and some of the things that she does, there doesn't seem to be a lot of history there, and I wish there had been a little bit more groundwork laid there. There's also a couple of minor characters who don't really get full stories, and I felt that he took liberties with some characters towards the end of the book, especially just to kind of wrap things up really neatly. It would have been, in my opinion, a stronger novel if some of the side characters had fuller arcs. There's some plot points that he just kind of picks up and drops off at the end of the novel without resolving them. And in a book this long, I think he could have gone maybe an extra step to do that. This is relatively minor. I thought it was a fun book. I think if you're someone who enjoys vampire novels, enjoys the tropes, but wants something different or a twist on it, I think this is a pretty good book. I think the book is really, in my opinion, about friendships around book clubs, especially how women view themselves and view each other through the lens of friendship in relation to their own lives, as far as housewives and mothers and things like that. So I think that he did a good job of kind of taking the vampire novel, taking things that you all know, these beats that you've seen 100 times before, and applying them here. And because it's something of a different set of characters, it does feel different and fresh in a way that you don't always get with vampire novels at this point. So that's the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. Like I said, I thought that the main character especially, I thought was pretty interesting, and her twists and turns in her life I thought were good. I think he does enough to bring newness to some of these tropes. I just wish some of the character work was maybe a little bit stronger, and I think the ending could have been a little bit better as well. So that's the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. Next time I'll be reading The Return by Michael Gruber. And until next time, please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll go ahead and leave my Twitter link below. I'll also go ahead and leave a link to the George R.R. Martin vampire novel that I reviewed earlier, and I am completely blanking on the name of that novel, unfortunately, but I'll have it there below in case you want to check that out. Until next time, bye.